Well, hello everyone. Welcome to 2019. Can you guys believe it's a whole new year?
It's exciting.
Yeah,
It happens
absolutely.
every January.
Every January we get a new one.
Woohoo!
So true. And this January brings some new faces here to this podcast. I know you're probably sick and tired of seeing me and Dave's ugly mugs. So we recruited another member here of the APP team into the podcast. So everyone, all of our viewers out there, listeners, we'd like to bring you the one, the only Scotty Too Hottie Roberts.
Oh my goodness, is that how you're going to refer to me?
Well, Scott, your nickname did not die when we previously worked together. That has to live on.
It's not so bad. There's other things that I could be called that would be far worse.
You've been called worse before, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm glad to be here, Kelly and Dave. It's great spending time with you recently over the past weeks and just reconnecting because we've worked together before in the past. But I'm excited about 2019 together and working with Agency Performance Partners.
Well, that's awesome because what we thought we'd do to officially welcome you to the APP team was Dave and I were both going to share our most embarrassing story about you.
Oh, okay. That's a great place to start. Yeah, go right ahead. And thanks for preparing.
If your microphone cuts out when you're trying to do the same back to us, we'll call it a technical difficulty. No, we won't go through that level of hazing. But just to introduce Scott, we're so excited to have him here. Scott and I actually met each other 6, 7, 10. I don't even know how many.
Yeah, it's a long time ago, isn't it? It was, 2009, I believe it was.
2009. And just to follow that up, I think, Dave, you and I probably met, right? We all probably met, we should say, right around that same time.
Yeah, just about there, within a year there, definitely.
So
Right.
It's kind of like the Three Musketeers are reunited again.
Absolutely.
But
Am I Brittany?
What do you say?
Am I Brittany?
If you want to be.
The only one I could think of.
So basically, Scott actually, long story short, Scott and I worked at the same company together, and I was kind of running the client services division, working with agencies day in and day out over the phone and best practices. And Scott had the privilege of kind of launching the training team that went out into agencies. So Scott was the pioneer, let's just say, and then now all of us have full circle come to run and follow Scott's shoes. To be in the consulting industry. So Scott, what's it like coming back in and being back in the saddle again?
It's exciting. It's really something that I've missed. And my experience with Dave too is working with him as a client as well, which was fun to get to know him in that capacity. So it's fun working together now on this team. I've missed it, and I've missed the people. I am looking forward to seeing some familiar faces, I'm sure, in the industry. But I'm looking forward to meeting new people too. I love to meet new people, love to help people and help them achieve their goals, whether they're their personal goals as well as the overall agency goals. So it's going to be great.
Absolutely. And Dave, do you want to maybe share how you and Scott know each other as well?
Yeah, so it was that same company, as you had mentioned, when Scott started the training department, I was working for an agency, and we were working with your company doing some system stuff, some website stuff, some marketing stuff, and we really one of the things we learned there was that, marketing and sales really go hand in hand. This is when the marketing term kind of came around, and we realized that driving leads into the agency with nobody to close them or a reduced skill set of a sales skill set wasn't helping anyone. So as we saw our marketing efforts actually working, we realized, oh no, the marketing efforts working, we've got to do something else. So that was when we brought in Scott and his team to do more of the sales training to really focus people on being able to say, okay, when the phone rings, this is what the client is looking for. This is going to position yourself to be put you in the best position to close down that sale.
Awesome. And Scott, you want to tell our viewers just a little bit about who you are as a person too, just your background before we dive into our juicy topic?
Sure. I grew up in Rhode Island here and really spent my time in business mainly in the jewelry manufacturing industry. So spent a lot of time doing that. Really had a lot of fun learning all kinds of aspects of factory work, but really enjoyed sales, really enjoyed leadership. From there, I actually spent some time in ministry. I'm actually still an ordained pastor, and I've worked with a local church here in Rhode Island actually for 12 years approximately. That was my longest time in one particular place. And then I've spent a lot of time in this industry as well, in the coaching and training. But this is this is who I am. I've got my wife Lolita, 4 children. Really don't live too far from Agency Performance Partners headquarters in East Greenwich, Rhode Island.
Awesome. Well, as we always kick off every podcast, we talk a little bit about where we are this month of January. So, Dave, where are you going this month?
January's a busy month because nobody wanted to do any training in December.
You don't use the word busy.
Oh, sorry. All right, we got to start over. It was a very productive month because a lot of my trainings that I might have done in December got pushed into this month. So I've been in Ohio, Florida, left the country to go up visiting our friends at Excalibur up in Canada, and one trip to Maine, New Hampshire, and then our big conference with the IOA team down in Vegas.
Awesome. And this month Iowa. Who doesn't want to go to Iowa in December? Not for January. Not me. I love it. And going to Iowa. Let's see here. I'll be in Connecticut a few times. And then I kind of take off for this whirlwind trip that kind of came together with actually Martin Luther King Day. Let me talk about that. So one of the things we always preach to our clients is using the 4 holidays that are kind of like bank holidays. So you got Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, Veterans Day, and Columbus Day. And we're really privileged because a lot of our clients take us up on those offers to be out on, with their agency. You can easily shut down for the day, provide awesome training. So the next day that's coming up is President's Day. So any agencies out there looking to say, I want to train my team, this team's awesome, definitely give us a call so we can work through that. So I'll be at Blue Marsh. I'll be in Pennsylvania with Tom Davenport, another HubSpot client that we have as well. And then I kind of take off through this crazy trip where we fly out to IAOA. So I'll be in Vegas for a day and a half. These 2 guys are going to hold down the fort with our director of First Impressions, Noreen Johnson. I'll have 4 people at IAOA. I then scooch over to Texas to go speak at the event for Germania, which is a carrier. Then I go speak at Joe Vincent, which is another great Texas event. And then one of our long-term clients, Texan Insurance, has hired me to come down and do a training day too. So I kind of have this whirlwind cross-country tour going on, but such a privilege to have so many people want to see us and spend time with us. And really looking forward to catching up with some people at IAOA. And then how about February, Dave? Anywhere fun you're going in February?
I'm going back to my second home, I call it now, back down to Georgia. Going down to visit Kevin Painter Insurance, which is in the hills of Georgia there, up in northwest of Atlanta. I got a trip out to Montana as well planned, and one to Illinois. So I'm in that same boat, taking advantage of these really cold months to go to some really cold states. But I'm looking forward to all 3 of those trips in February. Hey, you know what? I wanted to add something too before I ask you where you're going to be. You mentioned about calling us for the bank holiday training days.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention too that you can actually go online now that we've launched the store, and one of the products out on our store on our website is the training days, in addition to some other materials and some other ways that you can engage with us. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Totally. No, that's a really good point. February, I get to go to Banks Insurance in Virginia. And then we have something real cool that I want to tell everybody about that is actually a product that we offer. We do internally what's called the Sales Showdown. So while Scott looks happy and excited to be here right now, he has a big goal to get fired up to face the Sales Showdown. What that means is we literally get up and pitch and present and get torn to shreds by each other and come out stronger at the end. And so we actually do run these for agencies too, with role playing, things like that. So that's another consideration for a training day that you guys can consider. I'll be at our friends Ivy Insurance, Chris and Sandra. Hopefully you're listening. Long-term client, but can't wait to go back down there and spend some time with them. Then I'll be back in Virginia again. So 2 Virginia trips 1 month to Blue Ridge Insurance. And then we end up in your favorite state, but right over the Florida line in Georgia at the end of the month. So I actually feel like I get to go to a few more warm states than you, Dave. But that's all right.
Is that intentional?
Well, Scott, we have some clients in Antarctica that are really interested in your services. So.
Well, I have been to Alaska and worked with an agency up there, so I can handle the cold.
There you go. Nothing says cold like Saskatoon, Canada in January. Well, let's get to it because we're going to talk today a little bit about secret shopper calls, because this is something that we have pretty much done an agency performance partner since the day that I launched. And they've evolved over time. They've gotten cooler. And I think more and more agencies are hopping on the bandwagon for secret shopper calls. So, Dave, I don't know if you want to kick it off and share with our viewing public a little bit about how they work, what value you see in them.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Kelly mentioned, we've been doing these secret shopper calls for a while, but our new iteration has really kind of stepped up our game. I think in the past, we've done a good job with these. We've had some good secret shoppers. We've always had a survey that they filled out and kind of a process and things that we asked them to kind of keep an eye on. But we've really kind of got reorganized around it. So now we have a whole 6-step process from having a conversation before we even start to put together the scenarios to figure out what exactly are we trying to accomplish on this. Is it personal lines, commercial lines? Is there different departments? Is there an actual sales department, or is it an account manager that might take that call? Are there particular people that we're trying to hit? So we create find all this information out so that we can create a very unique scenario that really helps the agency with the areas that they're looking for. We then deploy the secret shoppers. We usually give them about 2 weeks to go through the whole process from making the initial phone call, allowing the account managers to get back in touch with them. If they don't, trying to do a follow-up proactively on the secret shopper end. So we give them a couple of weeks to do that. We then they do a full assessment, which includes a video talking about their experience. So you get a full video of everything. And then we get that off to you. And then we do a call to review the results. So this isn't just a matter of like, okay, yeah, somebody called and, wrote up, 3 sentences on the process. It's really bringing a huge value, I think, to what you get out of the secret shopper call, so that you're getting kind of a full 360 view of the experience that the customer goes through, not just kind of a checklist of things that may or may not have happened. So that's kind of the process. Kelly, I don't know if you want to go into a little bit of the specifics around what they look for when they're making the call.
Yeah, and everybody on this podcast has had the pleasure of making a few secret shopper calls. So Scott's going to chime in because he's made some recent ones and has some really great feedback as well. But I think that the big key is, to me, let's start with the why. Why would an agency invest in secret shopper calls? And to me, it's the insurance policy on your customer experience, right? I mean, it's insane. I'm just going to go over some stats that I pulled so people understand. Now, some of the secret shopper calls that we did over this past period were really well-known, high-profile agencies. So it's not something you can say like, oh, that's not us, that's not us. It is all of us at some point or another. So, you have to really look at it. But 100% of the agents, the secret shopper calls that we had, the secret shopper felt that the agent did nothing to build value in themselves or doing business with an independent agent. And why that stat ticks me off so much is that we all sit here and say people are better served by an independent agent. Yet when somebody calls into the office, we don't do them any favors, right? We're not sitting there saying, what is an independent agent? Why is this value? Why is this valuable? So we believe it, but we don't tell anybody about it. And Scott, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that since you've done a few secret shopper calls recently.
Absolutely, Kelly. This was a great way for me to kind of come back in to the industry a bit and to enjoy making some outbound calls into agencies and to talk with all the great people out there that are listening today. I agree. Whether it's the East Coast or the West Coast, North or South, I see so many similarities when I'm in agencies and on these calls. It's very similar too. Some of the high points that I had on the calls, first of all, were just some great people with great personalities. In most cases, the caring that comes through on the call is palpable on the phone. There was some cross-selling attempts that happened in some cases, not in all. A lot of times people were just wanting to kind of serve my particular need that I was calling about, and felt that was what they should do without looking at other things. But of course, we know the importance of making some cross-selling attempts for the benefit of the customer. So some did that. Some were creative in just like catching one of my email addresses that looks like a business and is. And so they were able to kind of bridge that and inquire a little bit about possibly insuring my business as well. And there was some good general rapport building. But some of the low points, one of them you just mentioned, sharing the value of an independent insurance agency. I was thinking as I was on the call, pretending to not know anything, that don't assume that people know. Don't assume that they understand the difference between an independent agent and the value points. You need to build that value. And in all the cases of all the calls that I've been on, that did not happen. And I think probably you spent years doing it. You're not thinking to do it on each call, but for the caller, for the client calling in, they can very well not know, not understand that.
And that to me is what makes us different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think people were as caring as I said. It was palpable, in their voices on the call, but there could have been more effort as well to get a little personal. In building rapport, you're building a bit of a friendship with someone. It's okay to ask questions. If I say I'm moving to your particular area with my family, it's okay to ask slightly personal questions like, so what's bringing you here? A change of a job or something like that? Or do you have family in the area? That's personal.
You should never get to quote life insurance. You get a lot deeper than why are you moving to the area?
Oh my gosh, yeah. But that didn't happen in many cases as well. It was amazing to me that people were, I don't know if they were timid or afraid to ask those questions, but that's how you get to know someone. And those are just common things that happen in any conversation when you're talking with someone. I think probably the lowest of points in some of these calls, if I were to pick on one that really stood out, it would be just delivering the quotations. If you can believe it, calling back to deliver the quote in some cases just didn't happen. And in many cases, there was never a direct ask for the business. And so it shouldn't kind of get to the finish line there and you wait for the customer to kind of make the next move. It really should be, leading them to through the sale and asking for the business.
Well, Dave, it sounds so much like our Apex sales training program would solve so many of these issues.
Absolutely. Well, I think that, sitting here as somebody who's directly managed salespeople, who have trained salespeople, who have managed service people that had a sales component and have trained service people that have a sales component, what I think comes out from almost everything we're talking about here, right? Lack of good quote delivery, lack of asking for the business, no rapport building. There's really what it points to is that there's no sales process, right? We're just taking the call and it's like winging a prayer, and it's like there's no focus on that. So until we show our staff how to create our sales process and then follow our sales process, there really is not. I don't think some of the numbers we look at and some of the experiences are disappointing. I don't find them to be overly surprising, because until we give them the tool in order to be able to be successful, how can we be surprised when we're not? And I think what it really comes down to is when I sit there and I talk to the agency owner and I ask them, how do you salespeople sell? What do they do? What's their process? Most of them start to describe what they do. And it's so instinctual. Is that a word? Yeah.
It is now.
It is now. It's such an instinct with them on how to sell that they just they don't realize that it's for other people it isn't that way, that they have to do the training there. So I think what comes out a lot, and the biggest value of these calls, is that there's a belief that the agency owner has in how the sales process is being followed that is often different from what is actually happening. And I think if you go through some of the secret shopper calls, really one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to line up exactly with what you wanted them to do, in which case you've confirmed that your team is following the process that you want them to, or it's not going to line up, in which case you're going to identify areas, whether you need a full training program like our 6-month Apex program, maybe you just need a training day, or maybe it's something you can take on yourself. You just identify 3 or 4 areas where you don't need to do a whole training around it. You just need to line up some improvement. So, but I think that by doing it, you now are empowered with the knowledge on what your team needs in order to be able to sell.
Well, and I just sat with an agency in Iowa, and we, there's this survey. So you get this nice printed, like, my team scored 22 out of 100 points, and that's hard to look at. And then there's this video from the secret shoppers, and we played it in the conference room, and it was really funny because they're like, we have to figure out how the volume can be low because people walk by. We don't want them hearing, because the secret shoppers are pretty direct in their feedback. And I mean, the looks on people's faces that this management team was like, if there was a basket to throw up in, they would have. It was like,
Good.
I thought my team was better than this. And so even if you think your team is amazing, investing in some secret shopper calls just confirms that they're amazing. And even some of these top organizations that have sales training, that have, had us come in, there's always these 1 or 2 points. And the other thing I want to say about the secret shopper calls is, the best teams in the world get checked to make sure that they're doing the right thing, right? So I don't know if any of you guys watch football, but the Patriots won yesterday. So now they're heading on to the next round of the playoffs. But Tom Brady went to go work with his throwing coach.
Yes.
GOAT, greatest of all time, even if you don't like the Patriots, right? Still went to go get his throw tweaked. And that's what I love about these calls is, like, we all don't do things 100% of the time. Now, I'm just going to call the cat out of the bag, too. Like, there's agencies right here now driving to work thinking, OMG, if I were to ever secret shopper call my staff, what would they think and what would they do to me? Right? So there's the fear of the pushback of what would they do? They would be so mad. And my message to you is the inmates don't run the prison, right? Sometimes we all need to be called out and said, hey, there's some areas to improve here. And yes, it makes us vulnerable and uncomfortable, but that's where we're going to get the best growth. That's where you're going to find the problems. And hey, by fixing 1 or 2 things in your sales process, you could potentially sell 25 to 30% more. So for a small investment of time, don't worry about the pushback. Worry about the fact that you're going to keep compounding these problems out there that you maybe don't know exist, right? I do want to go over just a few other stats so people understand what we're working with here. 73% of agents did little to build rapport, and the shopper felt it was more of a transaction. So this is a key component in your sales process, right? Is it a transaction where I'm just going through the underwriting questions? Or are we stopping and building rapport? And for a lot of agencies that are in their communities, you say, oh, well, we're a community-based agency. We're a small-town agency. If you're a small-town agency, you have to provide small-town service, right? And that means not providing a transaction. And many of these agencies that we secret shopped were actually in smaller communities, right? So even though we're sort of treating community members that way, and I don't think that that's a great way to handle it. 57.14% of the time, the agent quoted what the caller asked for and didn't make any recommendations. So almost 60% of the time, if they said, I'd like an auto quote, that was all that was delivered and or asked for. So 60% of the time, guys, there is like a wad of money on the table that we are just not paying attention to, and we're not providing the best value for the customer, right? Because by combining up the policies, in many states, they save the most amount of money. 79% of callers either never received a quote or the quote was emailed to them. So 80% of the time, it was just, here you go, email, or it was just never received. And Scott, I know you and I talked about this morning. Even when you received quotes that were emailed, can you kind of describe the emails that you were getting?
Yeah, a couple of the emails that I received just said 2 words, thank you, comma, and then the automated signature at the bottom, the email signature at the bottom with an attached quotation. So even though there was some good legwork done on the call, and I was feeling it was a good start with the particular agent. Yeah, to deliver something like that with no personal note, no information, and then not enough conversation as well to really close the business was odd.
It's horrible.
Right. I've never sent an email that way. Ever.
Not a sales email, right?
No, not at all. Just thank you and an attachment. Not even I sent an attachment.
Right.
Yeah, it was kind of astounding.
So a third of the secret shoppers never even received a quote after giving them their social security number. So a third of the time, no quote was delivered. You give all your information, no follow-up, no quote, no nothing. And that to me is horrifying. Not even just emailing somebody like, hey, you might not be a great fit for our agency, or I need X amount of time to work on this. Just goose egg after 2 weeks. So the person is really left high and dry. 13% of callers received one follow-up. So only 13% of the time did someone get one follow-up, but 86% of the time after the quote was delivered, there was zero follow-up. So they emailed the quote with thank you. How it takes 45 minutes, let's just say, to do a personal lines quote, give or take, for a home and auto. Probably less for just the single line policy that most people were getting, but no follow-up. And Dave, I'd love for you to speak because you have managed sales teams. Where do you see the result?
Well, I don't know. So I'm frustrated, right? Because I see these numbers and I take two different approaches. Part of me as a sales manager is, how are people surviving in the sales industry, with these numbers? The other part of me, which I wear a lot, the hat that I wear a lot, is my customer experience hat. And if I'm looking at this from a customer experience perspective, I'm like, well, no wonder why nobody wants to do business with us. So whether you want to look at it from the employee, agent, the agency perspective, or the client perspective, nobody is performing in a manner that is going to either drive revenue or provide a good customer experience. So if you want to call yourself a community-based, or we're 100% service organization, you want to use those terms, you have to build your process to match that messaging. If that's part of your brand, and that's part of your tone, and that's your message, and that's your mission, nothing in here creates a sales process that's providing that good client experience. If you're looking at it strictly from a revenue perspective, like you were just saying, I spent a half hour putting together a couple of quotes and then I just email them off. I never follow up. I never call the client. I don't know why we're even taking the phone call. Just tell the customer we can't help you and move on and do something else.
Right.
And I think especially because, everyone's so busy in agencies, right? We're all so busy. We're so busy that we did this crappy quote and we emailed it off days, if not weeks later, sometimes not at all. It's like we're so busy doing this stuff that doesn't drive any result. So we've cluttered up all of our time, spinning our wheels and not being productive. And, in a lot of ways I say shame on the agency principals who are listening out here, because how are you tracking sales? What's your pipeline management? How do you know every lead that comes in to make sure it's getting handled? And unfortunately, the management systems don't do this great job at it. So we have to work differently to get that done.
I was just on a call with the team today where the account managers were just, we were talking about the lower than expected opportunities that they're generating account rounding. And they were very open and honest that they just don't have time to do it. So so this is a prioritization issue, right? So if I have 100 things I have to do in the day and one of them is a new quote, to your point about blaming the agency principal, as the agency principal made it clear that working on that new quote is at the top of the priority list. I want you to do that before I send you out that certificate. I want you to do that before you get back to that billing question. As long as that's the direction we want to get. If we've said, no, quotes are at the bottom of the list, I want you to do all the servicing work first, then that's fine. But now we've set that expectation. And having any kind of expectation that quote is going to get done in 30, 60 minutes, 1 day, 2 days, a week, there's no expectation that we've set there.
Totally. And Scott, bring us home, because right now the statistics show that only 20% of the secret shoppers would have bought from the agent that they called in. What was your take on that? Did you feel comfortable buying from any of your recent secret shopper calls?
No, not at all. And you know, I'm sorry to put it that way. And this isn't just this giant pitch for our services, and we're making any of this stuff up. It was really astounding to be on some of these calls and be told, you know, you will definitely hear back from me by the end of the day, Friday. And Friday comes and goes, and Monday and the rest of the week passes by. And it's just amazing to have some of those expectations set for you as a customer, and then you don't hear back. I certainly would have moved on in many cases. I don't know. It felt to me like people are aiming for the wrong target in many cases. They're not aiming for the target of quoting the business with the target of closing the business, not only for, you know, revenue on behalf of the agency, but the proper protection for this person that really needs help. Instead, the target seemed to be quoting, move on to the next thing, and have a reactive approach rather than a proactive approach. If they call me back, then maybe we'll sell this. So that was frustrating. In addition, you know, I've often said, sell everything you have to everybody you serve unapologetically, because the
I like that. That's quotable.
Yeah, the products that you have are they're things people need. They need them, and they may not really understand or know the value. Like you had mentioned earlier, quickly, life insurance. It just may be something that someone's been putting off and hasn't gotten to, but it's so important for them and their family. And I guess lastly, I was shocked at the lack of follow-up. So I would say, follow up. Just follow up. And, you know, if you get my voicemail, keep calling. I'm busy, and it's your job as a salesperson to pursue the client, to pursue the customer. In my life, I've had people say to me when I finally get them on the phone, Scott, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you. And I always say, hey, don't worry, it's my job. It's my job. I know you're busy, to follow up with you and to get to you, and here we are.
Well, and Scott, if I remember correctly, many, many years ago, you once told me that you were looking for life insurance, and you had a life insurance agent call you 19 times.
Yes, that's right.
And I'll never forget it. I actually tell this story to people, and I think you said, like, you got them on the phone, you're like, well, can I just ask you, what kept you calling me 19 times, right? Because there's a big thing about, I don't want to sound pushy, that sounds stalkerish. You know, there's a lot of that connotation in the insurance industry. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the person said, because I know you need life insurance.
Absolutely. The woman that I was speaking to knew that I wanted this life insurance for my family, needed it for my family. It was long overdue, and she was persistent. And she also knew that I was traveling like crazy. So that was her message. I actually didn't want to even get into talking about the policy. She had already won my business. I was so interested in asking her, why? Tell me, please. Why have you called me so many times? Because it was just it was a great feeling to know that someone cared that much about getting this to me. Price became a very, very low factor. You know, I'm not going to say it wasn't a factor at all, but it went way down with that particular person.
So if any agencies out there listening to this and thinking to themselves, gee, golly, I need some secret shopper calls in my life, there's really two ways that you can get them. One, our agency assessment includes secret shopper calls. So this is kind of like a checkup on the whole business. So that's included. So if you're looking for us to look at every angle between retention, new business, management, leadership, culture, that's the direction you want to go into. If you're thinking, let's just start with secret shopper calls, we do have them. As Dave mentioned, you can actually buy them right on our online store on our website. There'll be a link in the show notes here. We recommend bulking up, getting a couple. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. But love to participate in that with you guys. You can, again, just purchase them right online, and we'll get going on them with you. You know, your other option, you know, is also too, if you're looking at this and be like, I don't need a stinking secret shopper call to know I got these problems in my business. You can also go right in, and we have our Apex sales training, which is a 6-month training program to help build that sales process, install it into your agency. They really have a couple different options here, but I recommend every agency go check them out. If you're inspired, but now's not the right time, buy them now. We can start anytime this year and get going, so that way you don't kind of get overwhelmed by all the things you may have going on. Don't dilly-dally, you know, let's get them on, and we'll start whenever you're ready. So really appreciate everyone listening today. Scott, how was your first podcast?
I had a great time. And I'm really excited and looking forward to meeting people in person, getting out in their agencies, meeting them on phone calls, more secret shopper calls. But, Kelly, it's something that I've done for a long time, but at the same time, it's new coming back to see, wow, how you have been building agency performance partners together with Dave recently. And I'm excited to see all the different things that we can offer where people can dip their toe in and start with something small, like a secret shopper call, as you mentioned, or they can combine and save. I was looking at some great things on the website myself too. I was impressed at the packages that are out there for agencies so that they can really plan to do, to really look at things in such a full way.
That's awesome. And I guess one other thing we didn't mention is a new product that we have this year, or we can buy blocks of training hours, virtual training hours. So maybe if you're looking, like David commented, just to tighten up a few areas of your sales process, we'll either create a custom presentation for you to build into our library, or we have about 20, 25 of them built already. So if you're like, how to ask for referrals, how to account round at the point of sale, you can do hour-long virtual trainings with any one of us and really kind of spark up your team in this new year. So you can take advantage of that. Also is on our online store. So I just feel like in 2019, we're full of solutions. If you've got a problem in your agency other than accounting, you should definitely call us. Only because that's like the one area that there are experts out there that know way more than me. Anyway, I appreciate all you guys being on the podcast. I appreciate our listeners out there, and we will catch you guys next February for our next podcast. Thanks so much, everybody.